Hey, good evening, everybody. Good evening. Good evening. I wanted to welcome you guys back to the Conversation 9-8 and uh, apologize for the technical difficulties, but we got through them. We on here tonight. Looking forward to having a conversation with you guys. Looking forward to being on here. Truly excited about the topic tonight and just excited about, again, just another opportunity. It truly is a blessing to be able to be here. And I don't say that lightly. But looking forward to the conversation tonight. Shout out to my mom, Mama D, who inspired me to talk about it tonight, this topic. So I just wanted to just give her a shout out. But again, man, I thank you guys. I appreciate you for rocking with me. Look forward to the dialogue and hoping that all is well with everybody. But sharing this with a few people, and we're gonna get right on into it. We're not gonna be before you long tonight, but I hope got a setting. You see, I'm in my daughter's room, and hey, I like what she's got going on. So I like her expressing herself and doing her designs with all the shoes that she loves. She's a sneakerhead. So, but I'm here, looking forward to the conversation tonight. Looking forward to the dialogue and. Thanks, Miss Joyce Jones. I appreciate it. Appreciate you. Thank you. Appreciate you. Appreciate that. But again, man, this is an interactive show. Let me know where you're tuning in from, and feel free to chime in. Feel free to chime in on the conversation because I look forward to it. But we're on episode 190 episodes. Been going strong now for over 2 years. Going over 3 years, and I appreciate it. Staying consistent with it, and I'm grateful for where we at with it right now. And you know, my whole intention was starting this was just to have put out content. I didn't see a lot of content that was out there was talking about real stuff that people go through from a Christian perspective, and that wasn't so churchy, that wasn't so this, that, and the third. And I wanted to provide something, just have real conversations and try to be transparent. And hopefully, it helps about it. But tonight, man, we want to get on and get with this conversation, and what we wanted to talk about was really. Understanding that toxic entitlement syndrome is simply selfishness on steroids. I want people to understand that the toxic entitlement syndrome is simply selfishness on steroids. And the reason why I wanted to bring that up, because I was talking with my mom, and my mom had mentioned the toxic entitlement and as a term that it talks about, and it said it's a belief that people are entitled to better treatment than others, or that rules don't apply to them. And I just wanted to talk from that perspective, talk from that dynamic as it goes into relationships. And I'm talking about all types of relationships, not just intimate relationships, but relationship with kids, relationship with parents, relationship with coworkers, any type of relationship. If you have a toxic entitlement syndrome, if you feel like you're entitlement, it's just really you're selfish, and your selfishness level is on steroids. So that really boils down to how selfish you are as an individual and what you're willing to do to address it. And most aren't willing to address it. Most people aren't. I mean, and an entitlement thing is one thing about it I want people to understand when we start talking about entitlement. You know, if we allow ourselves to allow entitlement to get in a space in any type of relationship, like we are actually owed something, and not grateful, or not not mutually give it back to it, but just feel like we just entitled to it. We don't realize, many of us don't care, but that can do irreconcilable damages to the relationship, and it can erode the relationship to the point to where it erodes the trust, it erodes the respect. Then it becomes a toxic environment because there's a lack of respect. There's a lack of respect when people feel entitled, especially entitled to something that they haven't even really earned or given the same effort or put in on. And it's almost like you ordering a pizza and you pay full price, and somebody else feel like they just entitled to come get some without asking you or respecting the fact that you paid for it. And most of the time people are willing to share, but they just want a general respect that, hey, man, I paid for it. It was my money to pay for it. Why you feel like you're entitled to it? You know, and in this entitlement thing, if we sit down and break it down, we sit down and look at it from a perspective, from a real perspective, we'll understand that it's not good. And it's the entitlement, toxic entitlement syndrome. And I want to talk about this from this perspective. it says that it said a toxic entitlement, it refers to an unhealthy belief or attitude in which an individual feels unwarranted or often exaggerated sense of deserving special treatment, privileges, or recognition. Now, we know we all got people in our lives who feel this way, who fall in this category, who have an exaggerated sense of like they feel like they're deserving of certain treatment. You know, they feel like just because they hold a title in a particular relationship that they should get this. And we see a lot of this stuff where, you know, you see it with a lot of sayings and how things been conditions and how gender roles or whatever roles it is. And people go in and they have this expectation. Well, this is what I expect and this is what I deserve. But then never look at it and never take accountability to, yeah, you may feel like you deserve it, but what you're actually giving. What is the other person in the relationship benefiting from you being in that relationship? And if you can't generally answer that outside an exaggeration, you got to realize that you're probably the problem. You're probably the problem. How you doing, Miss Witherspoon? Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you tuning in from my hometown, Uniontown. Miss Shirley Shepherd, hey, how you doing? Good evening to you. But yeah, understand that. Like, seriously, understand that. And I think one of the big issues that people have is, you know, one of the hardest things that people to really come to realization is people begin to become entitled when they become ungrateful and get used to something always being there. You know, it's just like the same thing with God. We know God always there. God always provides. So a lot of us, we take God for granted. But a lot of us take our moms for granted. A lot of us take our spouses for granted. A lot of us take our parents for granted. A lot of us take our kids for granted because the consistency that's there. And we can't pull back to see that these people are doing things that a lot of them, they don't have to, but they're choosing to do it. That's why it's so important for us to have a sense of gratefulness, because when you are grateful, grateful holds you accountable to appreciate the things that are done for you. And you don't mind putting forth the effort to communicate your gratefulness, not your sense of entitlement like they supposed to do that. Because a lot of us are blessed, but we be the main ones to end up running our blessings away because we're too prideful and we allow our ego and our pride to come in, and it destroys it. It destroys it. It destroys it to the point where we don't even want nobody to say nothing to us. And this is where we talking about, you want to ask a question. Well, how you feel like if somebody, you know, how you can identify if somebody feeling entitled? You can easily identify if somebody feeling like they're entitled because they have an expectation to where what is done for them, it should be done for them, regardless of their actions or what they're giving to it. Like they expect to get a return on something and not investing into it. That's crazy. But many people do that in relationships. They gain that sense of entitlement. There's a lot of people that feels entitled to their spouse being there and supporting them, their spouse cooking for them, cleaning for them, doing things for them. And yes, they may enjoy doing it. Yes, your spouse may enjoy cooking, but that don't mean that you don't have to appreciate it. I mean, those are the type of things that go, and it may seem small, but little bit by little bit, when we go into it and we look at it, a lot of relationships are simply destroyed because people get to that place of entitlement and selfishness, and that selfishness start to grow and it start to take on a life of its own and destroy that relationship. For real, destroy that relationship. You know, sometimes, and it's sad. This is a sad reality, but many are going to find this to be true. Sometimes people don't even realize that they're entitled because they always had it good. One of the things I had to realize, and one thing I had to realize when I grew up and I left home, growing up, I just had people in my family that could really cook. And I'm not just saying that to say that. I'm talking about it didn't matter where I went. I went on my grandmother's house, my aunt's house, my great aunt's house, my granddaddy, my mom, like my aunts, they could cook. Even my uncles, they could cook. So everywhere I went growing up, the food was just good. So based off my experience, that's what I thought it was going to be like when I went into the world. But I soon found out that was not the case. And that was a reality check for me. But I use that as an example of some people always have people being good to them. Some people always have people looking out for them. And they don't know what it's like not to have. So in their mind, they feel like they're entitled to it. But the reality is, by them not being appreciative, it can grow to the point to where their mindset and their action towards that person can become toxic. It can become toxic because they can feel like they're deserving of that. And just like you said, like I read earlier, but I don't want people to misconstrue this, and I don't want people to take this out of context, right? There is nothing wrong with you desiring a certain standard from an individual or from a relationship. There's nothing wrong with that. That's not what I'm saying. There's nothing wrong with you having an expectation for to receive certain things. The problem is when you expect that, but you're either one, unwilling to give that same energy, or you're unwilling to reciprocate to what they need from you. And then the other thing is you just feel like that they just should do it because of who you think you are. You know, like, don't allow whatever position you hold in a relationship to make you feel like that you are deserving of it over anybody else. Because any relationship that you get in should be mutually beneficial. Mutually beneficial. And I'm speaking on parents and children. I'm speaking on intimate relationships. I'm speaking on work relationships. It should be mutually beneficial. And if it's not mutually beneficial, it would eventually erode away because somebody will start to feel like they're getting over on. And that's the reality of it. And the reality is, one of the other reality is we allow ourselves to get to a selfish place, and we don't want it to be checked because we don't like to be held accountable. And that's many of us. Many of us, we don't like to be held accountable for our behavior. Many of us, we can sit down and look and take a logical approach to the relationship and see that, dang, I'm benefiting more in this relationship. And I understand any type of relationship, you're going to have your ups and your downs. You're going to have some seasons that you're going to benefit from. Some seasons you got to give a little bit more. But I'm talking about those where it never moves out of the favor of that individual. It doesn't matter if it's an intimate. It doesn't matter if it's a work relationship. It doesn't matter if it's a child and parent. It doesn't matter if it's a parent or a child. And what we got to start doing is we got to start taking inventory, and we got to start limiting access to people who consistently show that they're not going to appreciate that. Because a lot of times we enable entitlement behaviors in others because we refuse to shut off access to them. And I want to go ahead on and hit that again, but we have to realize that many times the entitlement that we get, or the sense of toxic entitlement syndrome that people develop, they develop it because we, in a sense, we enable it. We enable it because we feel like that we're doing something by them, or we're doing something good for them. But I promise you, that's not good. You have to also understand, and many times you got to look at this. As you mature and as you grow, you can look for the best in anybody. I'm a very positive person. I'm an optimistic person. I always tend to look for the best in people. But I've also gotten to a place where when people show me who they are, I begin to believe them. And some people, no matter what you do, it will never be good enough, and they will always ask for more. Those people don't know how to regulate. It's about them. It's about them. And you'll see those same people, everything that they do is centered around them getting what they want. You got to cut yourself off of them people. You got to cut yourself off. And I want to even talk about it, a little bit more, because what I do like about it is they talked about some signs of toxic entitlement syndrome. And I want to go in, and I know a lot of us, we can really relate to it, but some signs of toxic entitlement syndrome is these people that you're talking about that suffer from this, they have high demands. You know, they have a high demand. They in their mind, they feel like that they deserve more, so they demand from a lot of people around them. They expect others to do things for them. Like, they are always like to be the center of attention. They like to have control. They always like to be the shot callers, or the ones that are making the decisions, so they can feel like they're in control. They ignore other needs. They don't care about other people as long as they get what they want. And then when it comes to them being held accountable for doing things for other people, they will act as if you're throwing things up in their face, but you're not throwing things up in their face. You're just holding them accountable for who they are. And last, they use toxic phrases. You know, they use things like, you know, when you tell them the truth, they easily are offended. You tell them the truth about what they do, and they'll try to bring it up and be like, oh, it's your tone, how you told me. No, I'm just telling you, I told you what it was. You just didn't want to listen, and you just didn't want to take accountability. That's some of the traits of people that exhibit that behavior. And I'm being honest with you, if we sit down and look at it and dissect it, there's a lot of people that's connected to us that exhibit those type of behaviors. I'm being honest with you. And I'll tell you, when you have people that exhibit toxic entitlement syndrome, these people tend to be highly functioning. Like they tend to be, they produce results. They are successful. They tend to be ambitious. But a lot of that is just covering them up for them running from themselves and facing the reality that they feel inadequate on the inside. That's why they never want to put themselves in the sense that where they feel vulnerable. That's why they always have to have control. That's why they always have to be the one in charge. That's why that when they'll be a part of something, they want to influence it to where if it doesn't go their way, then they have an attitude or they want to, try to talk bad about it. But the reality boils down to that they are scared, and they are scared of being vulnerable, and they want to control everything in a sense of feeling like it make them feel comfortable. But they have to deal with the reality of what is the source of why they're that way, and not try to make other people responsible for it. But if you don't say nothing to them, they will use you up. They will use you up and dry you out and wouldn't care. I'm being honest with you, wouldn't care. These type of people, when you're dealing with people that get to a space, and a lot of people, one of the terms, some of the terms you like to use, we heard the word, and I say this, the word toxic is thrown around a lot. The word narcissist is thrown around a lot. But it really boils down to selfishness and self-centeredness. And you can tell these people because they genuinely do not care about the people around them. What they care about is and you'll see them, they're very attentive to people who they feel like they can get something from or elevate them to another space. So they'll act, they'll be considerate towards those people. But the people that they know that they can depend on, them people ain't going to respect them. They'll take them for granted. They'll just use them up, and they just act like ain't nothing happened. And these people, are very successful people. They're very successful people. They're highly functioning on the outside, but internal in their own home, they're highly dysfunctional. And they do everything they can, use all their power to hide it from other people because they're afraid of being exposed. They are afraid of being exposed. They are afraid of being exposed. That's why you see a lot of them, like this. A lot of people would choose it. They'll choose, and it's sad, but it's true. Many people who are entitled and selfish at their nature, they'll choose to stay by themselves because they are unwilling to even compromise to consider or be in a relationship with somebody else. That's why I say it's all about control for them. If they can't have control, in their environment, they are the ones that will freak out. They are the ones that will have temper tantrums, and they are the ones that will, but they want to be connected to things because that gives them a sense of purpose, but they won't want to sit down and deal with and address the reality of themselves. They will always choose to take from other people, but never be accountable for their behavior and their actions. And if you try to hold them accountable to it, they will get defensive and they will try to paint you as you are the problem, but you are not the problem. You're just standing up to them, and they hate accountability. And that drives them insane. It does. So, man, I tell you, man, I really, really appreciate you guys rocking with me tonight. I told you I wasn't going to be on long, but just remember, understanding that toxic entitlement syndrome, y'all can look it up. Look it up. Toxic entitlement syndromes will give you certain things, but it's just selfishness on steroids. It's just somebody who sit down and think about themselves, and it's all about themselves. And contrary to popular belief, they go on trips. They're probably doing well financially or whatever, but those same people are miserable because at the end of the day, they go home and have to deal with themselves, but they are too afraid to deal with the real them. So you guys have a great and wonderful week, man. Thank y'all for tuning in. Love you guys. You guys have a blessed week. God bless.